What up, IB in the building, and we back for another video, and I'm back with another team breakdown, another Western Conference team. We're breaking down the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Golden State Warriors had a very interesting season this year. Their core guys were all injured. Well, Kevin Durant left. Stephen Curry got injured, I think, 3 or 4 games into the season. Clay was injured in the NBA Finals, was going to sit out the regular season regardless. Draymond was battling injuries the entire year. D'Lo was also battling injuries while he was on the Warriors. So this team was basically not a actual representation of what this team will be going forward. So I thought it would be interesting to break down the Golden State Warriors. Now, let's start with their team state. At the time of suspension, they were 15-50, which put them at dead last in the Western Conference. Now, we know their core players, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins can be a part of that core for right now. We'll have to see how they use him going forward. I don't feel the need to have to break down Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. Both are amazing shooters. Steph Curry has tremendous playmaking ability on and particularly off the ball. He draws a lot of attention on his off-ball cuts, off-ball flare-outs for three-point shots, and he's a pretty good passer for somebody who's considered a score-first point guard. He's an opportunistic defender, not the best on-ball defender, but is a great team defender in terms of rotations, gives a lot of effort, and gets a lot of passing lane steals. Klay Thompson, probably the best 3-and-D player of all time, lethal three-point shooter, will shut down the best player on the wing or in the backcourt on the opposing team. But I do want to talk about Draymond Green, because we know about Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry, what they bring. We also know what Draymond Green brings. He's a great defender. He's solid off-ball, but incredible off-ball in terms of defense. Communication-wise, he is on that back line of the defense, calling out what he sees, kind of similar to like a middle linebacker in the NFL. Great help defender in terms of rotating in front of the pick-and-roll man, or if there's a double team happening and he has to slide over to the open man who's in the corner on the wing. He does all of the little things in terms of off ball to make him, which made him a 2-time defensive player of the year. He's a smart defender. He's not known for his on-ball defense, but he's an incredible off-ball defender. Great playmaker in terms of being that pick and roll man, getting the ball in the mid-roll, driving down the middle of the floor after getting the ball in the mid-roll and hitting the open man in the corner on the wing or wherever the help defender is helping off of. He always, or not always, but more often than not, he's able to make the right pass. He's able to spot open cuts off of elbow, off ball screen action. He's always able to hit the open man, and he's great in the fast break in terms of making the right pass there. However, over the past couple years, his shooting has fallen off a cliff. In the 2015 to 2016 year, I think that was his best year in terms of three-point shooting, and that was the year that Golden State went 73-9. I think it's going to be a point of emphasis for Draymond Green and the Warriors to get Draymond to shooting at least league average around 34% from three, because that's another thing that unleashes their offense. If Draymond Green can shoot, that unleashes the Golden State offense, and Draymond's just going to have to get back to shooting league average from three. It's been horrible, his shooting over the past 2 years. Now let's talk about Wiggins. He's kind of stagnated in terms of his development over the first 4 years of his career. He's a shot creator. He doesn't really take high percentage shots, but he's able to create a shot from time to time, and honestly, he was pretty good at it this year. He was a great finisher. From 0 to 3 feet, he shot 68.9%. He's great in the short mid-range area. From 10 to 16 feet, he shot 52.6%. But in terms of long twos, he shot 29.6%, which is a career low. But I feel like going into Golden State, the team will try to have him gravitate away from taking those long two, low percentage shots. And honestly, he won't have to take as many of those anyways, playing with Steph, Klay, and Dre, two players in Steph and Klay who will be leading the team in scoring, and Steph and Dre who will be leading the team in terms of playmaking and initiating the offense. He's been a more impactful defender this year. He has career highs in steals and blocks, 1.3 and 1.4 respectively. However, he's going to be able, or he's going to have to be more of a solid, of an on-ball defender than he has in his career. And off-ball in terms of making the right rotations and whatnot, because Wiggins has the stigma of being an offensive player only and being lackluster on defense, when honestly he came in the league with all the tools to be a great defender. He's very athletic, good size at 6'7", 6'8", long arms. Honestly, probably just has to be in the right environment. I don't think Minnesota was a good place for him to go to in terms of developing Andrew Wiggins, and I think maybe going into Golden State, that could be a good environment for him to buy in on defense and become a better player as a whole. I think especially with Draymond Green and Klay Thompson, hopefully they can mentor him on defense. I think this could be a really good situation for Andrew Wiggins to get his career back on track. He improved his playmaking this year from 2.5 assists a game last year to 3.7 assists per game this year, which is a good sign. He's going to have to be able to make smart passes in this motion-heavy Golden State offense. And honestly, I think it could be a good addition for Golden State if they can get Andrew Wiggins to buy in, because losing Kevin Durant, that's 25 to 27 points a game that you lose from your offense. And in no way, shape, or form am I saying Andrew Wiggins is close in any way to Kevin Durant, but he is a player that can get his own shot. He averaged 20, how much did he average per game this year? He averaged 22 a game on not horrible efficiency. Andrew Wiggins can hopefully, for this Warriors team, be Kevin Durant light. Just being another guy that can handle the ball and get their own shot. That's what Andrew Wiggins can provide for them. Now I want to move to talking about role players for this team. Honestly, this year for the Warriors was about developing players and seeing what players will be going forward with this team once everybody, all the stars, come back. Because obviously they didn't have it. Basically, they had a bunch of two-way contract players, rookie contract players, minimum players playing and getting minutes for this team. So it was kind of like a tryout, seeing what players are going to be a part of this team going forward in terms of being role players behind the starting five, behind the core players. So let's start out with probably the main bright spot for this Warriors team, Eric Pascal. He was a pleasant surprise. He was a second-round pick that nobody was really paying attention to coming into the season, but believe it or not, he was one of the only consistent sources of offense for this team. In 60 games played, that's another thing, he played 60 games. A lot of the players that, they're obviously, Warriors already had their injuries of their core guys that didn't play at all, but even players that they had on the team, they didn't even play a lot of games. Like Draymond Green, I don't think he played half of the year. D'Lo, I think he missed about a third of the year. Eric Pascal only missed 5 games and playing 60 of them, and he averaged 14 points per game in those 60 games, and not on horrible efficiency. 49.7% from the field is pretty good, especially when you're playing on a team that doesn't have a lot of offensive options, and you're basically one of the better or notable offensive options on the team. He showed shot creation ability from time to time throughout the season. From what I noticed in his game, he really loved to go to a mid-range pull-up off an isolation or off a pick and roll on the wing. He loved going to this mid-range pull-up from 3 to 10 feet, 41.1% from the field, 10 to 16, 42.2% from the field, and 16 out to just inside the three-point line. He shot 45.3% from the field, and that's where a good portion of his shot attempts come from. He also showed a great ability to score off line drive, isolation type of plays, and he really was able to finish at the rim. When he was able to get to the rack, he was able to finish, shooting a incredible 72.5% from 0 to 3 feet. Now that's basically your DeAndre Jordan, Hassan Whiteside, Mitchell Robinson type of percentage from inside. Your typical drop off pass or lob pass to the center, in which those are the only types of shot attempts that those centers get at the rim. That's kind of the percentage that Eric Pascal put up, and he was doing that off of a lot of those shots were off drop offs and putbacks, but a lot of those were off of his own creation, in which he himself was getting to the line, and that's partly because he's really strong and big and athletic for his size. He's about 6'6", 255 pounds. He's in that like Draymond type of body type, and he's really bouncy for that size, and he's able to move really well for his weight. Throughout the season, he looked like an aggressive scorer. I mean, it's not saying much because who else is the Warriors going to give the ball to? Jordan Poole? Like, no. Somebody had to score, and Eric Pascal showed that he wanted the ball in his hands, and he even demanded the ball in late game situations when his shot was going. In terms of three-point shooting, that's going to be a point of concern for him, especially playing on this Warriors team. It just wasn't consistent. From every month, it kind of varied. In November, he shot 28.3% from 3. In December, however, he shot 38.9% from 3. Then dipped in January to 24% and 26% in February, but 33% in March. So he was really inconsistent, but he showed the ability, at least in December and March, to hit the shots. But the main takeaway for me is that he was always willing to take them. Even though his shot wasn't falling in certain months, he basically took the same amount of attempts month to month, which shows that he's confident in the shot and believes that he will be able to drain it at a higher consistency. Now on defense, he really struggled. It's hard to pinpoint the defensive woes on a team like the Warriors, which was 15-50, and the team as a whole was horrible on defense. But when you look at Eric Pascal's defensive rating, with Pascal on the court, their defensive rating was 117, which is abysmal. But with him off the court, their defensive rating improved to 111.2. Now that's a sizable drop off for a team that was trash on defense regardless. But yeah, that's really a sizable drop off. I think going forward for this team, Eric Pascal can be a really good sixth man who won't have to be too concerned with defense because he'll be coming off the bench and won't be guarding as great offensive options, so he can just worry about getting his own buckets and being a consistent source of offense for this team off the bench. However, when he does maybe slot in the rotation for a small ball unit of Curry, Clay, Wiggins, Pascal, and Draymond at the 5, he is going to have to really tune in on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll see how the Warriors use him going forward. Kevon Looney, he got injured. I don't think he played at all for the Warriors this year. He's a solid center, solid starting center. He rim runs, plays hard, smart pick and roll defender. He's the typical center that the Warriors were able to get by with over the past 3 to 4 years in making their finals runs. They never really had like a great center that provided much outside of just getting rebounds, defending the rim, and defending the pick and roll. Like they had Jordan Bell, I think Damion Jones was another guy, and then Kevon Looney, which basically was their best center out of that bunch. The closest thing that they had to a center that was able to do more than just typical rim running was DeMarcus Cousins, but he was injured for most of the year and got injured in the playoffs, and they only got 1 year out of him. So Kevon Looney, yeah, he's a solid center, rim runs, plays hard, good on defense. He would be a really, really good backup center to have, and we'll get into discussing the center position for this Warriors team going forward. Next player I want to talk about is Damion Lee. He was kind of another bright spot for this team, averaged 13 points per game. I mean, somebody had to score on this team. He shot decently from 3, 35.6% on 3-point attempts. He shot 5 of those per game, and that's actually quite good considering that there weren't many options from 3 outside of him. Glenn Robinson and Alec Burks, they were options, but they got traded, and D'Lo was another 3-point option, but he was injured for some of the season and then was traded. So Damion Lee was kind of the consistent 3-point shooter for this horrible Warriors team. Like I said, Golden State was using this year to see who could be a part of this team moving forward with health. Maybe Damion Lee can just be a bench shooter, a shooter coming off the bench for this team. Next player to talk about is Jordan Poole. Now, I saw a couple of his games in college when he was in Michigan, and he was touted as a really good shooter coming out of college, but he struggled, honestly. He probably could have played really well if he had Curry, Clay, and Draymond to take some of the pressure on him, but with nobody, and I mean a bunch of nobodies on this Warriors team, people really tuned in to Jordan Poole. Yeah, like I said, he was known for his three-point shooting ability in the draft, but it hasn't translated thus far. He only shot 27.9%. But I don't think that is an accurate depiction of who Jordan Poole is. I think he'll get his shot right. He shot a lot of them per game. He shot 4.6 three-pointers per game. So suggests that he's a confident shooter, and rightfully so, because in Michigan in his sophomore year he shot 37% on 5.5 attempts. Now it could be a combination of being on a trash team, not a lot of spacing, and adjusting to the NBA 3. But I think when the Golden State Stars come back, he'll get a lot more open looks from Clay and Draymond. He's not a bad playmaker for the 2-guard position. He's a shooting guard. He's not a point guard. He's like an undersized 2-guard, combo guard type of guy. Averaged 2.4 assists in 22 minutes a game. That is pretty good for a rookie 2-guard on a horrible Warriors team. So those are the role players I really wanted to talk about. Now I kind of want to talk about this Warriors team going forward. In terms of direction, they're retooling, trying to get the right pieces around their core in order to contend for a championship next year. Make no mistake, they still have Stephen Curry, who is at least a top 7 player in the league. They have Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, 2 players that were able to help Stephen Curry get to the finals 3 times before Kevin Durant showed up. And honestly, that 3 alone, Steph, Klay, and Dre, should bolster them to a playoff seeding. A fully healthy Steph, a fully healthy Klay, and also a fully healthy and motivated and in shape Draymond Green, who's been known to come into the season out of shape and had to play into playing shape, similar to how Nikola Jokic did it this year. But Nikola Jokic really shedded some pounds over quarantine, but hey, I'm getting sidetracked. Throw in Pascal, who will develop and thrive in a lesser role. Wiggins, who might improve in a better winning environment, who also might buy in on defense, improve his 3-point shot. He'll be less of a focal point on offense, so he won't take as many of those inefficient long twos. Kevon Looney will return to full health. Hopefully Jordan Poole can get better in a lesser role, mainly talking about his shooting. Damion Lee may be able to thrive off the bench, not to mention that they have a guaranteed top 5 pick, because they have the worst record in the league, I believe, and that guarantees that they won't be able to drop out of the top 5, and they'll have tied for the best odds at the number 1 pick. So, speaking of that draft pick, let's talk about it. Who do they get? Now, they have a lot of options. There is a headline that came out about 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was further. It's hard for me to keep track of what comes out at certain times during this quarantine, but I remember a headline saying that Golden State was going to select Anthony Edwards if they got the number 1 pick. So let's break down Anthony Edwards out of Georgia. He's a combo guard, 6'5". He's very athletic, a very athletic scorer. He's pretty strong for his frame. He's quite built. He's a good finisher at the rim, above and below. He's a good shot creator. He showed the ability to take and hit tough contested shots. He showed that in a preseason, or not preseason, I think it was the beginning of the season type of tournament for college basketball. He hit a game-tying shot in one of those tournaments, and it was tough. It was on the right wing, contested. And those are the type of shots that he thrives in taking. He's not a pure catch and shooter. He really thrives the most and is getting the most value out of him when he has the ball in his hand, and and he's creating for himself. He's a tough shot taker and a tough shot hitter. He's kind of in that Dwayne Wade, Donovan Mitchell type of mold, an athletic, bouncy 2-guard that can make a living off of tough shots, and he's not your typical sharp shooter at the 2-guard. He is likely the best player in the draft. Most mock drafts I've seen, they have Anthony Edwards as the best player in the draft, as the number 1 prospect. Could be a good player to build around once Steph is past his prime. He has number 1 scorer type of potential, which is why I said he could be a player to build around once Steph is past his prime. And the team could use some more shot creation outside of Stephen Curry, and maybe Anthony Edwards can develop into that secondary shot creator. So those were some pros for Anthony Edwards. In terms of cons, he's not the best fit. I mean, he would be in a crowded backcourt with Steph and Klay, and he's kind of in a crowded wing depth chart with Clay and Wiggins. So unless the Golden State Warriors don't view Wiggins as a part of their future plans, which is very likely, they could have Stephen Curry, Anthony Edwards, and Klay Thompson run the 1, 2, and 3. But if not, I don't know how you involve Anthony Edwards in terms of offense if you really picture Wiggins. If you really picture Wiggins being a part of the future of the team. I mean, they could run this super small lineup with Steph Curry, Anthony Edwards, Klay Thompson, Wiggins at the 4, Draymond at the 5. That would be wild, but I don't think that would be something that they do. So those are just some things to take into account when talking about Anthony Edwards' fit with this Warriors team. Next, let's look at James Wiseman. He's a player that only played like 5 games in Memphis due to some allegations or something. He's a center, and I said I was going to talk about the center position for the Warriors going forward, and this is really what I was alluding to. James Wiseman. He's a 7-footer, incredibly athletic, 7'6" wingspan, shot blocking and rim running potential out the roof. He's really mobile for his size. He can be your typical paint beast type of center with size and athleticism that should make him an efficient scorer off of drop-off passes, lobs, transition buckets, punishing switches in the post. Should be a really dynamic rebounder. That's kind of what the Warriors really lacked at the center position. Somebody who was dynamic at that position, really athletic and big, and just like a presence. Like JaVale McGee was athletic, but I would not say that JaVale McGee was quite dynamic. Kevon Looney, not really much scoring potential. Same with Damian Jones. I think James Wiseman could provide something that the Warriors have never had in their past 5 or 6 years of contention. He's quite raw, needs a lot of development. He doesn't really have that much besides his physical tools and just being a beast inside the paint. And he's a bit thin for being a center. He's got to bulk up a little bit, become a bit stronger. Shot creation out of the post is kind of a question mark, but he's shown the ability to take a turnaround post fadeaway that I've heard that he settles for a bit too much. Pros in terms of his fit with the Warriors. Like I said, center is the position most devoid of talent for the Warriors. James Wiseman would come in and instantly provide that. Great fit. He won't come in with high expectations. He can allow Steph and Dre to generate his shots, and he should really thrive in the Warriors type of spacing. He's dynamic and explosive, can be a rim protector that the Warriors never had at center. Still raw. Golden State is a good environment for him to develop. Cons, he would basically be coming in straight from high school with limited college experience. Couple that with question marks regarding his feel for the game, his basketball IQ. Those were kind of the downgrades in terms of his draft profile. And for a team that's looking to contend right away, that's not really the best combination. It's going to be hard, or not hard, but it's going to be interesting to see how Golden State, the Warriors, Steve Kerr, Bob Myers, and them, how they commit their time to contending and balancing that time with catching Wiseman up to the speed of the NBA game. It's really a slippery slope, and playing center in the NBA is becoming increasingly difficult with increased spacing. As a center, you're going to have to do more than just patrol the rim. His three-point shot was kind of a question mark. He showed the ability to shoot him in high school. He doesn't shoot him at a high percentage, and we'll have to see if a lack of three-point shot might particularly hurt him, especially hurting the team if Draymond Green can't shoot league average from 3, and then you have Wiseman, who's not going to thrive going out to the NBA range 3. That might hurt the Warriors' offense, which has always thrived on spacing, and movement, and fluidity. I think the final player I want to talk about is Obi Toppin. The breakdown, he's a tremendous athlete at the 4 position. Great finisher, great dunker. Y'all have seen his highlights and clips in college at Dayton. He has 3-point shooting ability, shot 39% in college. He can even play the small ball 5 he showed in college. I mean, college centers aren't really the biggest, but he showed the ability to play some small ball 5, can play the 4 position. He can pick and pop and pick and roll because he's a dynamic finisher inside and shot 39% from 3 in college. He is probably one of the out of the top like 10 prospects, he is the prospect with the highest floor. He might not have the highest ceiling, but he does have the highest floor in terms of he will be able to come into a team and contribute right away. He's a solid defender, like an average rebounder, not much shot creation. A lot of the points that Obi Toppin gets is kind of created for him, and he is an older rookie. He's not coming out of college as a one and done. Pros for Obi Toppin's fit with the Warriors: experience. That will make him more NBA ready, especially on a championship team or a contending team like the Warriors would be. He's 6'9", which would allow him to run power forward with Draymond Green at center, and that could possibly maybe coincide with a new Warriors death lineup, which would provide plenty of switchability. Basically, he could fit right away into the Warriors system. The cons, I don't really have many cons besides he has a lower ceiling than your typical top prospect in terms of guys that you would draft with like a top 3 pick. Obi Toppin doesn't really have the highest ceilings. He doesn't really have the highest ceiling for one of those types of players. But I mean, he's really a solid prospect. He's not going to be really creating for himself that much, but in terms of a forward in this day and age of the NBA, somebody who can spread the floor, can convert very well in traffic. He's an average defender inside and on the perimeter, can pick and roll and pick and pop. I think that's going to bode well for him going into this new age NBA. We talked about the prospects that I think the Warriors should target. Let's talk about their plan of action, what they should do. They need to get healthy, which should be easy. They weren't one of the 22 teams that are supposed to come back and play, I think July 31st. They weren't one of those teams. Clay was already on a timetable for recovery. Steph was ready to play, and Draymond was resting this entire time, so they should be well rested going into next season. In terms of the draft that I just talked about, honestly, if they got the #1 pick, I would go for Anthony Edwards. He's the best prospect in the draft, and he's the player who's most worth of the #1 pick, unlike Obi Toppin, who is like a prospect with a ceiling who isn't as high as Edwards, but a floor that is particularly one of the highest out of the top prospects. So in saying that, I would say if they got a pick within the 3 to 5 range, maybe 4 or 5, that I would use that pick on Obi Toppin because he can come in right away and produce, and he's less likely to struggle. They need to test the fit with Wiggins to see how Wiggins can play in this Warriors system. Is he going to be a player that will go forward with this team? Is he a part of the future of this team after Clay, Dre, and Steph? And honestly, they have to use their mid-level exception to sign maybe, I don't really think they have a backup point guard off the bench for this team. Damion Lee is really a wing player. So same thing with Jordan Poole. They don't really have a point guard that can come in off the bench. That was Sean Livingston for this team in the past. They don't really have that bench point guard anymore. They could keep Kai Bowman, but I would use that mid-level exception on somebody to run point guard off the bench. So honestly, the future is pretty bright for the Warriors. It's just gonna depend on what they do in the draft. What will Draymond Green be moving forward with this team? Will he be able to get back to 2015, 2016 Draymond Green? Or is he gonna be the Draymond Green that we've seen the past 2 years, especially this year, who's really gonna be just an albatross, especially with him making, what, $19 million a year? And him not providing as much value as he would have been providing maybe 2 years ago. That could really hold them back, but honestly, I think with health going forward and having a top 6 player in the league, Klay Thompson, the Splash Brothers back, you're adding more young talent in Wiggins, Eric Pascal, the top 5 pick, developing your role players. Honestly, the future is pretty bright for the Warriors, and I think they should be back in championship contention for these next 3 years. That's gonna do it for today's video. Public service announcement though. Subscribe! I'm starting to use my YouTube metrics type of shit, and I'm seeing that 30% of my viewership comes from people who aren't subscribed. What are you doing, my guy? Join the IB gang so you can see in your feed when I do a team breakdown of your favorite team. So to that 30%, let's get that sub count higher. I think I alluded to this in the other video that I uploaded today. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put the sub count right here. Editor Ryan, put it right here. Zoom in on it maybe. Thank you. I think we're at 29. Now that I am addressing the unsubbed homies, let's get at least 5 more subscribers by, I don't know, the next 24 hours. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, and until next time. It's been your boy IB. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.